Hey folks, Why Would You Ask That is a podcast that answers some of the weirdest questions. A lot of those are inappropriate for some listeners. If you're squeamish, easily disturbed, or just having a bad day, this may not be for you. But if you've got to know the answers like we do, stay tuned.
Why would you ask that? My name is M, they, them.
I'm Karen, she, her.
And I'm Remy, he, they, pronoun change.
We love to explore genders. Today, we're talking about something that Remy's been killing me with ever since he suggested it. Coffee baptisms. What the fuck is a coffee baptism? Why is this? Did coffee find God? Like, what is going on? Did they take a little coffee man and put him in the little coffee river? Or are people being, like, dunked in coffee? What is a coffee baptism? And if it's something about the butt, I swear to God, I'm gonna be pissed, because I've been sitting here thinking that coffee, for some reason, had, like, this spiritual awakening, a little coffee bean, and they had to individually dunk each coffee bean into the fucking river to baptize that little bitch. So what the fuck is it?
Okay.
I have a theory.
What's your theory?
It's a way to make coffee kind of like kosher, but like for Christians.
Is it like Mormon coffee? Like, well, I mean, the whole, Mormons, there's no hot drinks.
What?
Yeah, there's a thing that's no hot drinks. So that covers, like, coffee and tea and all that stuff.
Why?
I don't remember why. I was never a Mormon. I just remember it being the thing.
Okay, Remy, please add that to the list, because what?
Okay, will do.
Sorry, okay.
We're gonna end up alienating all of our
Mormon listeners. Okay, so Remy, what? Coffee?
Being baptized?
I will tell you. Hold on. Let me open this, because you have said something that I need to open a second link. Because you said this thing about hot drinks, and then I wasn't going to talk about this, and now I got to open it and talk about it.
Oh.
So we're gonna get that answered.
I meant adding it to the list, like, for later, like another podcast episode.
Oh, but this specifically has something to do with coffee as a hot drink.
Oh my gosh.
Being a problem.
So fucking dope.
So I gotta open this and talk about it, because you said something about it. Okay.
It's your fault, Karen.
Should we all talk about, like, should we go on, like, about our favorite coffees?
Okay.
Like, how do you take your coffee?
Me?
Yeah, how does everybody take their coffee?
Okay, well, I work overnights.
So multiple times a night.
I drink Death Wish coffee. It's incredibly strong. It's got like several hundred milligrams of caffeine in it per cup.
Damn. Should I consider it to, like, get through my day?
Your heart might explode.
Yeah, that's a good point. You think it's like, I guess it's probably more than the Folgers that I drink, huh?
Way more. Maybe we should just upgrade you to, like, better coffee?
Whoa.
I'll buy you some better coffee.
Hold on. It's the best part of waking up. It's Folgers in my cup.
Okay, bro.
Wait, was it Folgers that had the really, like, weird ad where it was...
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I like hazelnut creamer. That's it. That's how I take my coffee.
I have to drink decaf unless I'm making a day of drinking coffee.
And working.
And I like it. I like it best black, but lately I've been taking creamer in mine.
Karen, your Folgers has about 80 milligrams of caffeine per 12 ounces. And my Death Wish coffee has 708 milligrams of caffeine per 12 ounces.
So it's a little bit more.
A little.
I could like work my way up to that, probably. I don't know though.
What I've been doing. The first time that I drank the Death Wish coffee, I was going to school for my undergrad. I was working overnight, and I would get off work at 7 a.m., and then I would go to school at 7:30 and be at school until 4 p.m. So I was extremely tired all the time, so I bought the Death Wish coffee and drank the Death Wish coffee, and then I spent every day that I would drink it, I would like sit at my desk and like my arms would shake, and I would feel like the world was vibrating.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm not about that life.
Maybe
I've
not
already
for
learned
me.
my lessons.
And I do want you to know, in the course of the research that I was doing for this episode, I did encounter a place where somebody had died from drinking coffee with too much caffeine.
That sounds right. Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, yeah, it'll friggin'
It'll fuck you up.
It'll fuck you up. Yeah.
Like, I don't consume a lot of caffeine, so my little rodent heart will probably fucking die.
In order to drink this stuff, it has to look like white when I'm done putting creamer in it. It tastes like battery acid to drink it black. No offense to the people who make this coffee. It's just incredibly bitter when you drink it without any creamer in it.
They probably know what's up. I mean, like, seriously. They made coffee, called it Death Wish, and they're like, this will only keep you up if nothing else will. And you went, okay. So...
I think that flavor is like the least of their concern. Yeah. Unless they like flavor their coffee, like maybe they have like Death Wish hazelnut or
They do have Death Wish hazelnut.
Oh my god!
So their flavored coffee brand is called Valhalla Java, and it's hazelnut flavored, and it's not bad. It's not as caffeine heavy, but it still has a ton of caffeine. And now they have Death Wish blueberry.
Wow.
You almost said the two flavors that they have. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think at Halloween they do a pumpkin spice.
No, of course.
It's my fucking weakness.
It's a basic... I just thought of a basic bitch going, pumpkin spice! She's like vibrating.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep. So there was a time, we're talking about how we like our coffees, but there was a time when we wouldn't be able to do that because coffee used to be feared and outlawed.
Oh.
When?
Like marijuana.
A little bit. Coffee used to have like its own prohibition, just like alcohol in the 1920s. So now we can talk about coffee history. And you can learn about coffee baptism when we're done.
Oh, I'm so excited. I love coffee. So tell me everything.
Okay, so we'll talk about how coffee came to be. Legend says that a goat herder in Ethiopia discovered coffee when he saw his goats eating berries, and then they got really excited and hyper. So he told the abbot of a local monastery about it, and the abbot came and got the berries, and he thought of the idea that he would just dry the berries and he would boil them and he would drink whatever happened because the goats liked it. So I guess he thought he would just make a drink out of it. This is how humans discover everything that we eat.
Like, damn! They seem to like that shit.
Yeah.
I want it too.
Yep. So he threw the berries in the fire, and then when they were done, he raked the berries out of the fire, and then he ground them up and dissolved them in hot water, and there was some coffee. The abbot and his monks, when they drank the coffee, it kept them awake for hours at a time, which was really helpful for people who needed to stay up hours at a time praying. And then word got out and the drink spread. But there's another origin story for coffee, too, that says that a Sufi mystic, last name Al-Shadhili, discovered coffee after spotting some particularly energetic birds flying over his village. And then they dropped some berries, and he just decided he was going to eat them for some reason.
Okay.
Why you would drop
straight for him?
Yeah, why you would drop food that some animals flying over you dropped? That could be poop. But he just picked him up and ate him anyway. So
I mean, there are people who eat coffee.
No. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a really expensive and like gourmet coffee, Karen.
I am going to be respectful.
You know, I'm Googling right now how much it is.
It's the world's most expensive coffee. It's made from the poop of the civet cat in India.
Okay.
I'm getting
Here.
one of these at $12.50 an ounce.
Here's the picture.
I mean, it's cute, but that doesn't mean I want to.
It basically, you know, processes the beans for us.
Okay.
I wouldn't though.
I mean, people haven't died from it, right?
Probably not. They collect the feces and then they process it themselves, so like to clean it and stuff, and then they make the coffee out of it.
Okay. Yeah, then it's probably fine. I mean, it's, surprising to us, but, if it's not killing anybody and it, they clean it, I mean, there you go.
A lot of people will drink it either for like flex or I don't know, I guess maybe they could genuinely like it.
Yeah.
But it's so expensive I don't even want to try it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I was willing to do the bugs because I could afford the bugs.
Right.
However, the poop coffee, I can't afford that.
$12.50 an ounce?
That's on the cheap side.
Jesus.
I did read one where they just like decide to just say like $80 for a cup.
That's insane.
It's I mean, you have to it's a very special coffee.
Yeah, this article I'm reading from the Hindustan Times says that they don't really even export it because it's difficult to export and it is really just sold locally anyway. It also says that the way they do it is the civet cat eats the flesh of the coffee cherries and not the bean, and the natural enzymes in the civet's stomach enhances the bean flavor when they do finally eat the bean, and that's why this coffee is unique. So that's how that works.
All right. You
now
know what?
We've both learned.
We've all learned something today.
Oh, cute dog.
Sometimes he's
All right.
cute.
Now we loop back around.
Yes.
Back to
Okay,
coffee baptisms.
So, Al-Shadhili ate the berries that the birds dropped, and then he found himself to be very energetic too. And then there's also a story about a sheikh named Omar, who is in exile from Mocha, which would be in present-day Yemen. Omar was famous for supposedly being able to cure the sick through prayer. He lived in a cave, and one day while he was hungry, he ate some berries he found nearby. They were super bitter. He roasted them, but then they got really hard, so he boiled them, and that made a brown, gross-looking drink, but he drank that, and that was coffee. And drinking that gave him an enormous amount of energy, so he discovered that his discovery was celebrated, and that story goes that discovery was so celebrated that they let him go back home.
Wow.
And I don't know which one of these is true. Or if any of them is, but the National Coffee Association cites the goat story, so I'm just going to assume that that one's the truest.
What if they're all true?
Maybe all of them happened in some way. Probably a lot of people have eaten coffee at some point and then just didn't discover coffee, but have eaten it before it was discovered.
Damn, these berries. You look like attractive berries. Not sexually, but they're like pretty.
You know, you would have the hipsters of the time who had eaten those coffee berries or made coffee drinks before, and then everybody is just like, look at this new drink, and they're like, I've had this drink before, it was cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. So whether any of it is true or not, by the 16th century, coffee was the beverage of choice in Persia, Egypt, Syria, and Turkey, and Yemeni merchants took coffee home from Ethiopia and began to grow it for themselves. It was prized by Sufis in Yemen who used to drink to aid concentration as a spiritual intoxicant. They also used it to keep themselves alert during devotions. And then when it spread, it had a lot of power. Coffee forged social revolutions. At first, people were drinking it at home, but then coffee houses started springing up all over the place in Africa and the Middle East. And coffee houses were places to socialize. So people would go and drink coffee and listen to music or watch dances or play games with their friends and other people. But most importantly, people would go there and gossip and hear the news of what was going on.
Hot diggity shit. You love gossiping.
Mm-hmm.
So coffee and coffee houses brought the peasant class together, and they would sit there and they would share ideas. And so it attracted fear and suspicion from the people who were higher up. And also, in particular, it attracted fear and suspicion from the religious people. Because a lot of this disquiet that was happening was against people who were in power above, and a lot of people who were in power above were in the various religious positions at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So those people, if they had gotten their way, there would just be no coffee houses.
Which
so what happened
lame.
was, yes. So what happened was, there was just a big movement to make coffee illegal in general. For example, somebody named Sultan Murad IV of the Ottoman Empire made it illegal to consume or purchase coffee. It's recorded that he was so obsessed with eliminating coffee from his empire that he would disguise himself as a commoner so that he could go to coffee houses without suspicion and find people who broke the law, and he would kill you.
Ugh. Oh my god.
Okay, that's a little bit overkill, but alrighty.
Over coffee?
Yeah, over coffee. The things that I read said that he would decapitate you.
Jeez!
Again, a bit overkill. Not a fan.
Yes. So then Sultan Murad IV's successor to the empire was also really about ridding coffee from their lands. So instead of straight up murdering you immediately, he would punish you with a harsh beating the first time that you were found drinking coffee. And the second time, he would sew you into a bag and drop you into the river to drown.
Holy shit. Jeez.
Alright, people, what the hell?
So coffee drinking, bad. Yes.
It's overkill.
So coffee drinking was banned by jurists and scholars meeting in Mecca in 1511. The opposition was led by the Mecca governor Cair, who was afraid that coffee would foster opposition to his rule by bringing men together and allowing them to discuss his failings. So thus was born coffee's association with sedition and revolution. The governor Cair decreed coffee as haram, which is like sinful. But the controversy over whether it was intoxicating went on for 13 years after that, because they were trying to decide if it was intoxicating like alcohol was. Like if it was something you could be addicted to or not.
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah. They're not wrong about that.
13 years later, the ban was finally rescinded in 1524 by an order of the Ottoman Turkish Sultan Selim I, which allowed coffee to be drunk again. And in Cairo, there was a similar ban in 1532. Coffee houses and coffee warehouses were just ransacked and destroyed. So coffee has just had a rough history.
Damn coffee, sorry bro.
But it didn't take long for coffee to travel from the Middle East and Africa over to Europe. England's first coffee house was established in Oxford in 1650 at something called the Angel in the parish of St. Peter in the East by a Jewish man named Jacob, in a building known as the Grand Café now. And London's first coffee house opened in 1652 in St. Michael's Alley, which is near St. Michael's Churchyard, and I think it's still there, I read. So there was a man named Samuel Pepys who was a naval Okay.
Get it out now.
I'm 12.
Pepys.
He was a naval administrator, and he kept a really extensive diary. And he visited the London Coffee House, and so you can read his diary. And when he visited the London Coffee House on December 10th, 1660, he wrote, "Colonel Slingsby and I in the evening to the coffee house in Cornhill, the first time that ever I was there, and I found much pleasure in it through the diversity of company and discourse," which just lets you see what the inside of the coffee house was like. Lots of diversity in there, which people didn't like. People did not like diversity in the 1600s.
No.
The rich people and the church did not like diversity when the people mingled together in the 1600s. That's how you get revolutions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's That is true.
So in England, in England and Europe, coffee was met with the same suspicion and religious prejudice as it had suffered in the Middle East. So European travelers would come back from those other countries with like lots of stories about this mysterious, intoxicating drink. And to the Catholics who are currently in charge, it was, quote, the bitter invention of Satan, they called it.
Okay.
Their problem with it was that they associated it with Islam. And so they were like, no, we can't have this. And so they also said that because it was associated with that other religion, and they said, well, you're just using it as a substitute for wine. And so they decided that it was going to be outlawed. So Charles II, King of England, did a proclamation for the suppression of coffee houses and issued this and banned coffee houses and the selling of coffee. And I have a little quote from it, actually. Click. He says, whereas it is most apparent that the multitude of coffee houses of late years set up and kept within this kingdom have produced very evil and dangerous effects, His Majesty thought it fit and necessary that the coffee houses be, for the future, put down and suppressed, and with the advice of his council, by his royal proclamation, strictly charge and command all manner of persons that they or any of them do not presume from and after the 10th day of January next ensuing to keep any public coffee house, or to utter or sell by retail in his, her, or their house or houses, to be spent or consumed within the same any coffee, chocolate, sherbet, or tea, as they will answer the contrary at their utmost perils.
Tis.
Christ, people.
Yeah, at the same time he was banning chocolate, sherbet, and tea, but that's different. That's a different story.
Chocolate, sherbet, and tea. Wow.
Not fucking cool.
Yep.
People are
And so
weird.
now I'll loop into Karen's question about people not liking coffee because it was a hot drink, and take a little detour.
Woo!
So, an Italian botanist named Prospero Alpini went to Egypt in the 1500s, and he discovered an enormous amount of just plants that he thought were really weird. And while he was over there, he documented what they were doing with medications using those plants that he considered to be weird, and he brought them back over to England and such. He said, quote, the Arabians and Egyptians make a sort of hot brew of it, which they drink instead of drinking wine, and it's sold in all their public houses, as wine is with us. He was writing about coffee. So him and the other physicians began trying to describe the impact that coffee had on health, but doctors struggled really hard to understand the effects of coffee and chocolate and tea. All of them arrived around the same time in the mid-16th century to Europe. Like I said, chocolate was described by European travelers to South America, tea from those who traveled to China, and coffee came from North Africa. And so this it confused everybody because it didn't fit into their neat little medical thing at the time. So the question that they had was, how did this fit into the medical theory of the humors? Because a hot beverage like coffee didn't fit into the humor theory. So in essence, when you said, did they not like it because it was a hot drink, one of you, yeah, kind of.
Wow.
The concept of the humors is just really, really weird.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Galen believed that the human body was composed of the four humors, or fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. And the key to this pseudo-medical system was balance. Every individual had a unique humoral composition, and if the body fell out of equilibrium, then you got ill. And so Galen wrote a recipe book using food as medicine to make your humor stay in balance. And surgery and stuff was an option that was used after you used food to treat your humors.
I don't understand.
So, foods like cheese and wine and stuff would be used to treat an illness before you would use medicine, real medicine.
Oh, well, I mean, okay. If you're not feeling good, maybe eat something. True. But
so
also...
Galen says that every food has its own humoral affiliation, which changes based on preparation, if it was cooked or spiced, for example. Food could be hot, cold, dry, or moist, with each characteristic mapping onto the fluids of the body. So Galen wrote on the powers of food and classified foods based on their humoral powers, and basically left a map for physicians to use. And it included recipes, literal recipes you were supposed to follow to cure people's sickness, like a cookbook, but for curing people's sicknesses with food. It would be like going to take your cookbook out of your kitchen and being like, I'm gonna use this recipe that I was gonna cook for dinner, but I'm gonna fix your giant cut on you with this.
Oh no. I was about to be like, oh, like a stomach ache. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, eat something. I don't know. Eat things that help with your stomach. I don't fucking know. For me, it's ginger, but they don't like ginger because it's not from friggin' England.
Yeah, so like if someone had a fever, they would look at Galen's cookbook and they would be like, "Well, I need to do some bloodletting, and then also you should eat a salad." Because a salad is a cold food.
Oh my god.
And if somebody had indigestion, they would be like, "Oh, you have indigestion. You need to eat something dry. Here's some pepper and wine."
Woo-wee.
But wine is wet.
I don't know, Karen.
Wine is wet, right? Make it make sense.
But you know what? When people drink wine, they also call it dry.
That's red wine. Some wine. Some wine.
I don't know
is
anything
not
about wine.
way.
I don't drink wine. Like, wine is pretty gross to me. So
when they started like doing the trade routes and stuff with other countries that had foods that they weren't familiar with, they struggled really hard to fit them into their weird little cookbooks of humor balance. So some things were easy, like when they found turkeys, they were like, okay, well, turkeys are like peacocks and we eat peacocks, so turkeys are just going to have the same humoral prescriptions as peacocks. So they would just give them the same recipes, and they would just be like, well, you don't have peacocks, but you have turkeys, so you can just substitute turkey in this recipe for peacocks.
I don't.
But store-bought's fine too.
I don't think that's right. What does peacock taste like? I've never had peacock.
Well, I don't know, but back then in England they ate peacocks, so
What?
they ate a lot of weird stuff.
Are peacocks native to England?
I guess, I don't know.
No. Hold on. Now I'm gonna do some research. Excuse me. Y'all can keep talking. I'm just gonna look for peacocks.
Peafowl are a non-indigenous species not covered by any UK wildlife protection laws, thus not classed as a wild bird in the UK. There we go.
Boom. Yeah, everything that came up for me was the streaming service.
So when they got coffee, tea, and chocolate, it was really troublesome because they couldn't fit them into anything, because those three things in particular were unlike anything at all that they had ever seen before. All three just could do different things depending on how you prepared them. So they were like, I don't know. So
they're like, is it
chocolate,
dry?
Yes. So chocolate is fatty or hot or moist, depending on what you do. So some physicians would be like, okay, but like it can be bitter, but if you don't add sugar, but if you do add sugar, it's not. And this can be dry, so it's good for like phlegmatic disorders. But also, how can it be dry and moist and hot and cold at the same time?
The different stages, my dude. Oh my god!
So with coffee,
ice.
People in the past are dumb.
So with coffee, physicians looked at this drink and they were like, "Oh, it's hot." So they were like, "Okay, this thing is a hot thing." But then other things
and then
were like,
Becky came in and she said, "Hold on a second. Let me introduce you to iced coffee."
yes. So then Becky came in and was like, "Wait, coffee actually cools the body by drying up some fluids."
Oh my god.
Which acknowledges that coffee can work as a diuretic and make you have to go to the bathroom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then all three of these things, coffee, tea, and chocolate as a drink, they were like, wait, Hold on. And then they had to be like, okay, so it's bitter, but if you put sugar in it, it's way different. And they just were so confused. So then they were like, okay, but are they medicinal in all of their forms or only some of their forms? So
None of their forms.
Some physicians said yes, and some physicians said no. And so they debated a long time as the coffee houses just sprang up. And then chocolate got way popular. And then in 1687, there was a physician named Nicholas. I can't pronounce his last name. And he was also a pharmacist for Louis the 16th. And he wrote a book on the, quote, correct usage of coffee, tea, and chocolate to cure illness. And in it, he voiced his annoyance at other physicians who classified the qualities of the beverage differently based on the diseases they wanted to treat. So he said, if one substance could cure any illness, what did that say about the rest of humoral theory? As new medical paradigms began entering physicians' vocabulary in the 17th century, humoral theory just like fell apart because they added things like coffee, tea, and chocolate to it.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just imagine for a second that things are not the way that you originally thought they were. Like, maybe your thinking needs an adjustment, and it's not like I don't know. Fucking. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So to answer the like musing that was had about like, did they just not like it because it was a hot beverage? A little bit. That's a little bit correct. They had a real hard time with coffee because of the properties of it as a hot beverage. And it, along with tea and chocolate, basically helped to ruin the entire humoral medicine theory.
Love to see it.
Way to go, guys.
I mean, it wasn't until the early 1900s that the humors theory totally and utterly went away. Like, completely. It persisted for way longer than it needed to. But it finally went away, like, at the very turn of the 1900s. But today we still say things that come from the humors theory. Like, when you say things like, you have to starve a fever or you have to feed a cold. Like, those sayings come from a time when we believed in the humors. So it's still here. Like, we still practice things that come from the time of the humors. So it's interesting to me.
I mean, yeah, there's some things that are actually helpful and, did make sense. I mean, they wouldn't have come up with things that made sense otherwise, things that worked. Like, they wouldn't have made a whole practice of it if it didn't work in some manner. So
there was that. So Charles II banned coffee, chocolate, sherbet, and tea, and coffee houses in general, because everybody thought it was evil and dangerous.
It's so mean.
But then the public, who socialized in coffee houses and shared ideas and got the news and stuff, were so dismayed and so angry about it that they called the Pope. The Pope was like, oh, "Okay, I gotta taste this for myself," because all of his like cardinals and things were like pressuring him to step in. Because this was like a largely Catholic place at the time, so the Pope being like the head of the Catholics, they were like, you have to say something, because if you tell them that they're not allowed to drink it, then they will stop acting like this.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, it's the devil's drink. Tell them that it's evil and they can't drink it.
And he's like,
oh, fuck.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Thinking of Shaq's face when he does that.
So Pope Clement VIII was like, I can't just ban it without tasting it, guys. And so when he tasted it, his quote was like, he said, quote, "This devil's drink is so delicious, we should cheat the devil by baptizing it." Quote.
What?
Oh my god. She was kind of right. I mean, not entirely, because that's not at all what kosher is like, but I was like, oh.
That is the funniest shit.
So how did they go about it? How do you baptize coffee?
So what he did was, because Catholics don't have like a literal, yeah, they do. I'll cut that out. So what he did was instead of banning all Catholics from drinking it, he just I guess in front of everybody gave coffee an official papal blessing. Like he said a blessing over it, over the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
My God.
And cleansed it. And then drove out all the evil spirits, and then told everybody it was safe for consumption.
Okay. All right. He just blessed all of the coffee in the world.
Yep.
Yes.
Even the coffee that hadn't grown yet.
Yep.
He's
all
like, the spirit of coffee has been cleansed. Drink up, bitch.
That's how it works. All the coffee that is and all the coffee that ever will be, it's fine now.
Mm-hmm. All that was, though, all the people that drank that, they're super fucked. They're in hell, for sure.
So, after coffee was baptized, coffee houses were built way faster with more and more frequency. Churches, even across the world, started something called a coffee hour.
Coffee hour.
And that's when...
like tea time.
Yeah, but so that at the churches...
At church, though.
To a few, actually.
You have?
Yeah. It's how they like to bring people in to socialize.
That's true.
It was a weird time in my life.
I'm Methodist, so we just serve breakfast.
I grew up Southern Baptist, so they didn't do anything.
That is so sad.
My ex-wife's family was a variety of different ways. We had the Mormon part of the family and then the Christian part of the family. The Christian part of the family was like, hey, this coffee, we went. It was awkward.
As they usually are.
That's really interesting. Because in the church that I grew up in, it was a Southern Baptist church, and they don't do anything. They're very reserved. And then the church that I went to when I moved with my mom and stepdad away from that was a Foursquare church, which what that is a branch of evangelical Pentecostal. And I just learned that recently. And they did food, but not coffee.
I mean,
and they did movie nights to get children to come in.
Wait, Pentecostals can watch movies? I didn't know that.
Well, so it's a branch of the Pentecostal church, but it's not strict like the Pentecostal main church.
So they can wear jeans.
Yeah. So they don't have those strict rules like the women have in the the main Pentecostal. It's a branch off. It's so because their literal name is Foursquare, and it's just a branch away from Pentecostal, but it started as Pentecostal. It's like a leaf on the Pentecostal tree.
Foursquare. I worked at the art gallery and the little coffee place, or it was like a gift shop right next to us. We shared a ceiling. They played their music way too loud. And I'm not like one of those people who's like, hey, you kids, keep your music down. But when it's Dua Lipa 50 times an hour, you're like, okay, I really can't take this anymore. Please, for the love of God. Ed Sheeran, done. Shawn Mendes, done. I'm like, I'm out. Ariana Grande, They were it was a specific time that I was there that it was just those songs all the time, and I couldn't take it. Sorry. But yeah, it was called...
A lot of anger in your heart.
Yeah, it was called Foursquare Cafe. So I'm like, huh.
Yeah, at the one that I went to, I never knew that it was an evangelical church, but it was the youth pastor was a rapper. He has CDs.
Oh.
You can find his music on YouTube.
Okay.
He taught self-defense in my taekwondo studio. He's the actual pastor now. Yeah, we had a pool table in the youth room. It was a cool church.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like one of the cool churches. Like, Josh went to the cool church in our town. I went to the old church in our town.
I just went to whatever fucking church somebody pointed me at.
Your mom always brought you to our church.
Yeah, we went to a different church at first.
Yeah.
And there's like other churches and shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you guys were not always there. But anytime you were there, I'd be like, oh, I know them.
Yeah, I sat there hating every second of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Because I don't deal well with that shit.
Mm-mm.
Just don't like sitting in a room and being told things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Churches across the world started this coffee hour where people would go and socialize before and after the service, or before or after the service, while they drank coffee. So it's really interesting to me that people still do coffee hour or some form of coffee hour where maybe a coffee is not done. Churches have just held on to this adoption from coffee houses where they do socialization. And they wouldn't have had it if they hadn't unbanned coffee.
Yeah, I guess thanks to the Pope.
For baptizing coffee.
Yeah.
So Samuel Pepys, who did the diary, and many others, the coffee house was like a newspaper to him. In his diaries, he would go to the coffee house and he would write the things that he heard and gossiped about. And it's really just really interesting because it just shows you like a window into life in the 1600s from a view from inside the coffee house. It's just very cool. So in there, he wrote about the latest news of the conflict with the Dutch. He wrote about the quote, the comet seen in several places from December 1664. He wrote about, quote, the threat of the plague growing upon us and of remedies against it, quote, from May 1665. And in November 1663, Pepys refers to diverse discursions on the Roman Empire, the differences between being awake and dreaming, and a discourse on insects from inside the coffee house.
Wow. That sounds about right. This sounds like exactly what we talk about.
Yeah, so it's just like he goes to the coffee house to be a writer, you know?
He's out and he's like, I heard this shit.
It's just like if I take my laptop to the coffee house and I just like write a little short story. He went up there with his notepad or whatever and he wrote a little discourse on the differences between being awake and dreaming.
Again.
By 1675, there were more than 3,000 coffee houses in England by itself. And some of them had a bed and a breakfast for overnight guests.
Damn, dude, you gotta really be like into coffee at this point. This is like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I even have this, it's from Wikipedia, but somebody even wrote this, the virtues of the coffee drink. I'm going to link it on the resource page. Open this bigger. I won't read all of it, but like the first lines say, like, the grain or berry called coffee groweth upon little trees only in the deserts of Africa or the Arabic. It is brought from thence and drunk generally throughout all the grand something dominions. It is a simple, innocent thing. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's just somebody who just like writes a little short story about how much they love coffee.
The Grand Seigneur's dominions. It's a... hold on.
It's great. I'm gonna put it on the resource page so people can look at it. So the problem with coffee houses still, though, was that as things were in the 1600s, there were still people who weren't admitted into the coffee house. Unless they were sex workers, women were excluded from coffee houses.
What?
But women, it is. But women were angry about it and they let people know it.
Mm-hmm.
So one woman named Mary Estelle wrote an essay in defense of the female sex in 1696.
I think I read that.
Yes, she wrote, quote, a coffee house habitué is someone who lodges at home, but he lives at the coffee house. He converses more with newspapers, gazettes, and votes than with his shop books, and his constant application to the public takes him off all care for his private home. He's always settling the nation, yet could never manage his own family, end quote.
Oh my god. I love that. She's like...
Fuck out.
She's just like, These fucking guys, they sit in their coffee houses talking big talk, big game, like, I'm gonna change the world. And then they turn around, come home to their wives, and they're like, baby, I'm so tired. Can you make me some dinner? Can I have a sandwich?
Exactly.
And, like, look, anyone's gonna be changing the world, it's gonna be fucking Mary Elizabeth. All right?
It's great and not great because the 1690s she wrote that and it feels extremely relevant.
It's extremely relevant. I'm so...
I love
Sorry.
her tone. Anytime I find a woman who writes like that from this time period, I want to talk about her because people don't talk about the women in the early modern and Renaissance periods who were writing things that were like this. People just focus on the old white people who were writing stuff in this time period, and she wrote a whole essay about how women were great and men were being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't talk about it, so I'm talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So Estelle was in agreement with all the other wives left at home with just like their chores and their tea, now that the tea wasn't outlawed. In 1674, there had been this like super vitriolic thing that was written called the Women's Petition Against Coffee, which I have a picture of the front of it. I'm in general. It's over here. The picture says the Women's Petition Against Coffee, representing to public consideration the grand inconveniences accruing to their sex from the exclusive use of that drying, enfeebling liquor presented to the Right Honorable the Keepers of the Liberty of Venus.
I think it's excessive use.
Maybe. It is. Excessive. It's got a long S in there, so...
Yeah, it's got one of those S's that looks like an F.
Yeah.
What?
It's called a long S, and I don't like
Long
them because it
S.
trips me up sometimes.
Oh yeah, they're the worst. Drying, enfeebling liquor.
Yes. So, in that one, the wives of all these men who just lived in the coffee house argued that their husbands were forever absent from the home and family, neglecting their domestic duties, and all for, quote, a little base, black, thick, nasty, bitter, stinking, nauseous puddle water, end quote.
Oh my god, okay. What? Hold on a second. Ladies, don't hate the coffee.
Hate the man.
Hate the man.
And then Mary of the other essay, she said, quote, that coffee made men, quote, as unfruitful as the deserts whence that unhappy berry is said to be brought, so much so that the offspring of our mighty ancestors would dwindle into a succession of apes and pygmies, end quote.
Wow, okay. Cringe.
Yeah, it is cringe. But also, she's like, man, you drink so much coffee, now you can't even satisfy me sexually.
Damn.
The language isn't that great, but it's the 1600s.
Yeah.
So she's telling him that now he's got like erectile dysfunction because of all the coffee he's consuming.
Yeah, I mean, that is a problem.
Yeah. And then they wrote another one in 1660. There was another one in 1663, which was before these ones, called The Maiden's Complaint Against Coffee. So they wrote a lot of these in like a span of like, I guess, several decades, trying to get themselves allowed into the coffee house.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because this seems like a really interesting several decades long like protest movement, just a quiet little protest where they just kept writing pamphlets and essays. I never heard of it, but it's fun that I've heard of it now. And then the men wrote one back that was called Answer to the Women's Petition Against Coffee, and it said that it was, quote, base adulterate wine and muddy ale, end quote, that made men impotent, and that coffee, on the other hand, was basically the Viagra of the day, making, quote, the erection more vigorous, the ejaculation more full, adding a spiritual ascendancy to the sperm, end quote.
Yeah, but they're wasting... Sorry, it's not wasting, but they're... You know, I'm gonna be that bitch. They're wasting it on the sex workers they allow in the coffee houses. Like, what the fuck? Like, go home to your wives.
And so, obviously, eventually, all these pamphlets and stuff worked because eventually the women got in there. And then coffee just went from there. And now we have coffee like we have it now. There's literally from my house where I'm living, there's 4 coffee houses within a 5-minute drive.
Right. And now my coffee house is my house is the coffee house. Okay. I drink my coffee at home. Everyone stay the fuck away from me.
Yeah, and I've got my coffee maker here. Most people have a coffee maker of some variety. At work, we have 5 coffee makers on the unit at work. So
we have 2 at my work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So coffee obviously came back.
So coffee really did find God, I guess.
Yeah. Or God found coffee. Oh, hold on a second. Guys, this is actually good.
Yeah, coffee experienced a rebirth from Satan's drink to saintly. That's what I've got.
But thanks everybody for listening. We are very excited to take your questions too, because we want to hear them and we want to answer them, and we are so super qualified to answer questions. So what you can do is you could visit our website, which is whywouldyouskthat.com, and go to that little contact form, throw in a question, or you can email us at whywouldyouskthatpod@gmail.com. So please send us your questions. We don't care how weird it is, how gross it is. Just don't ask any personal questions. That's our one line. Ask your weird questions. That's what we want. So thank you for listening. This is M, Karen, and Remy, and ask us some shit. Thank you. Good night.